Welcome everyone to the January 19th, 2023 Helm Developer Call. Let me go ahead and share the meeting who doesn't already have it. If you have something to add to this, go ahead and add it into the discussion area. And if not, we'll go ahead and get started. This week, we don't have any announcements. I guess we do have the one announcement I should add in. We did release 3.11 of Helm, went out this week. There were 2 release candidates for it because there were a couple regressions. We were able to get those fixed, so the features didn't have to be pulled that caused the regressions. And we got 3.11 out. So yay on that. Does anybody have any other announcements we need to discuss? I'll take silence as nothing. With that, we'll get to the discussion topics. And it looks like the first one we have up is Martin. Martin, did you want to talk about your air gap scenarios?
Yes. Hey. So let me share my screen. And so I'm here with Pablo, who is actually who did send the pull request to the team. But basically, I'm going to describe very quickly, or I'll try to be very brief, the rationale behind this improvement proposal that we sent. So Pablo and myself, we are part of Bitnami. So as within Bitnami, we have several use cases that involve distribution of Helm charts. And so far, we've been handling distribution in a kind of like a artisan, or if you want, manner. But we were thinking that, well, we wanted to do or think about this use case of especially air gap distribution more in detail, and we were thinking, look, we can actually probably craft some internal tooling and improve the existing tooling that we have, and do this ourselves, or we can actually just reach out to the Helm community and see if this can be of any use. At that time, we also happened to engage with Scott. All right. So we happened to engage with Scott and talking about OCI scenarios, and this topic came up as well. And he gave us a few hints and guided us. Hey, we actually, if you guys want to work on this use case, there is this other improvement proposal that we look at, which is HIP 15. And that fit what we needed, but there is some particular things that we thought that could be improved, and that's why we came up with this new proposal. Basically, let me get into the actual details. Basically, the main two example use cases, or 2 of the main use cases that are probably very familiar to some of you, is air gap distribution. So the idea of having a Helm chart and you want to distribute that into or you have to put that into an environment that does not have any external connectivity. So you need to put the Helm chart, and then you need to bring the container images, right? Now, then you get into the problem on how to figure out the whole set of the container images that a Helm chart can use, which is not deterministic, as it depends on the input values. And with operators, it becomes more complicated. This is something that HIP 15 addresses. It proposes the idea of listing everything as annotations, and that kind of works. Then other similar scenario at the very end is the same scenario, is distribution. Like when you are a reseller for Helm charts, and your Helm charts are going to be used by others, and you need to change the FKDN of everything, essentially. So it looks like it's other who actually is reselling your charts. In both cases, you need to relocate the container images. And again, you need to have the whole set of container images available. And so far with HIP 15, we could probably be okay implementing that, and we plan to implement that. But at the same time, we we are reaching, or we are having, or our customers are coming to us with more and more interest on things that 3 years ago probably people didn't care about, which is the secure software supply chain requirements, essentially, right? And this idea of having a Helm chart, if I can get all the container images, that is fine, but the problem is how can we guarantee as a distributor of Helm charts that what gets installed, so we package the Helm chart, how can we guarantee that what gets installed at the 2 weeks later in an air gap scenario is the same thing that we package. Now, what did we package? Okay, we packaged just the Helm chart. We didn't package the container images, but when we package the Helm chart, Bitnami, today we are actually we have a system that we use, a supply chain that basically generates a lot of metadata, a lot of attestations, a lot of artifacts that include things like, I don't know, LinkedIn results, vulnerability scanning, bill of materials for the different components. So that goes on all the container images for all the charts and dependencies on the main chart. We do the verification of that chart as well. That means we pick the chart and we deploy it on multiple Kubernetes clusters. Then only if everything passes, there are no vulnerabilities, so the chart can be trusted and it works in all the Kubernetes cluster, we go and we deploy the chart, right? We publish the chart. Now, once we publish this chart, here comes the problem. Now, so someone comes 2 weeks later, try to deploy that in a chart, that chart in an air gap scenario, and there isn't really guarantees that the container images that he's going to get deployed are the same container images that we verified. So that, again, probably 3 years ago wasn't really that important, but today is becoming more and more important. And we thought about this idea of, well, maybe we can have a log. Actually, we can generate some sort of actual repeatable bill of materials of all the container images that a chart and its subcharts need, because that's when we can actually use that bill of materials later to verify that what gets installed is exactly what we get packaged, and what gets verified is exactly what we get packaged. And when we distribute that to air gap, or when we have to relocate to a reseller, is actually the same thing that we package, right? So that's kind of like the motivation and the main use cases on this that we try to describe here. And I don't know, maybe Pablo, you can go stop sharing and you go briefly over the spec, and then we want to basically get your feedback, right? Whether this will be useful, if we should go on our own, or if we rather can go and just try to start contributing to the Helm code base. But Pablo, maybe you want to show that. Let me stop sharing now. Hold on.
Yeah, so there we go. So basically, continuing on what Martin was saying, as a summary, we thought that there's a need of specifying the images that a chart depends on. So basically, the first idea we came up with was to generating this new image log file. I'm gonna try making the font bigger. So yeah, this image log file, it is just like other log files that already exist in other languages, or even here with the chart log is kind of a YAML with a specification that allows us to specify those images our chart relies on. And as you can see, for a given chart, in this case WordPress, for on Bitnami, we can specify its digest for its architecture of its image, container image. And we could not only include the images of the chart itself, but we could even include, if necessary, the images of the dependencies the chart uses. But that's another scenario. So in one of these conversations we had earlier with Scott, we thought that maybe this could live in the chart log file, which at the moment seems like a place that could host this information pretty good. To be honest, we don't have a really clear decision here on whether it should live in the image log file or the chart log file. For us, maybe the image log file in the beginning was more natural because it could be treated as something independent, and we wouldn't be modifying the chart source code. So if you package a chart and put it somewhere, you could put this image log file elsewhere, and you wouldn't be modifying the initial chart. But in the end, maybe that's not a big deal.
So I have a lot of questions at this point already. I have got lots and lots of questions here. So like one of the things that was called out was cosine, right? And you want to know that something is cosigned, right? And so cosine, we'll go ahead and store, we'll store something in the registry. But how would you do verification? Because you can't talk to their service in an air-gapped environment. And how would you carry over the signing artifacts or some of the artifacts such as an SBOM and other things that would be stored in the OCI registry alongside of your container images, those artifacts that people use for verification, that they use for trust so that they know what's going on. Is the intent to capture those things?
It could be. So the idea is not to have any support in Helm to reach outside air gap. That by definition is impossible. We cannot reach outside.
Yeah.
But to have a way to get a repeatable bill of materials of what you package with Helm of your Helm chart, in the sense of if I have a list of all the possible container images, that's really the challenge, right? You need to have all the possible permutations of the container images that a chart can use. If you also have the digests or at least a way that allows you to navigate through the OCI, well, then you can grab that and store that.
Yeah, but this brings two challenges up that I'm curious of your thoughts on. One, how do you get all of the container images? And this is one of those things, it's not something you can automate. For example, you could have a controller running that has something hard-coded inside of it. You could have CRDs and they can have different structures to record it. And how do you navigate to even discover this? Or are you expecting that this list will be handcrafted or crafted by tools outside of Helm? Like, how does this come together?
That is a HIP 15. So we build on top of the previous of a previous improvement proposal. And the idea is, as you say, it cannot be done. So what we do is with the current Helm state, right? I'm sure it can be done better, but with the current Helm state, we embrace HIP 15. We say we are going to annotate all the charts. So that's something that our team will do for all the Vietnamese charts. And the idea, imagine that this doesn't go into the Helm code base. How will we do this? We will have all the charts annotated, and we will have some sort of tool that just loops over the annotations and say, okay, use Crane, pull the digest. These are the digests. I'm going to create a log file. I put this log file somewhere. That then later I can use some tooling to read that log file and relocate exactly the same thing that I package, and I can verify the same thing I package. I can publish the same thing I package. That's how we will do it. But the idea is to embrace what we propose in that pull request is for a Helm chart that has the annotations, then perhaps Helm tooling can actually create a log file. But whatever exists in Helm, it needs to have the annotations. Otherwise, it cannot do that. It cannot generate a log.
So in terms of how you move a Helm chart to a disconnected environment, there is some tools out there. Zarf is one of them. I don't know if you've heard of Zarf at all.
I don't know that one.
So that's a big one that I haven't used personally, but I know many others who work, especially in the Department of Defense in the United States, they use it quite a bit.
I can't. So we have one, believe it or not, and actually our team wrote it. Is hold on, what's the name? Tansu. He relocates. It's the name. What's the? Here it is. I'll drop the link on the chat. So the other day, talking to the WeaveWorks team with Scott, actually, we were surprised that actually they were using this for relocation, the asset relocation tool from Tanzu. What's the problem with that? But so basically, I don't know Surf, and Surf might be more advanced, but in our case, for example, for some Helm charts like WordPress, Bitnami, Helm charts, we ended up with basically what the relocation tool or relocates does ours is you provide regular expressions that tell the tool, hey, this is probably where you can find the container image. And it gives you the container image, but at the very end, you need to write a file that, for example, for WordPress, there are 9 container images in the WordPress Bitnami Helm chart, and you end up with 9 container rules because we do it in different ways on the different charts. And at that point, you say, okay, if I'm going to have a line per container images, I might be better with just somehow generating the annotation, and that's probably more useful. So yeah, we thought it's probably it looked better for us to actually have that native support, or at least somehow.
Yeah, okay. So in the interest of time, because I haven't read this and really considered it, I can only ask some basic questions. What I'd like to do is ask that the Helm maintainers go take a look at the proposal and comment on it, ask questions. It's written in a HIP form, so that way we can have some time to think it through offline. And then thank you for giving us a good overview, motivation for it, and trying to do. And consider what's going on, and probably ask a bunch more questions and make some suggestions. And that's easier served out of sync from everyone.
Fantastic. We're very happy to, that you guys dedicated the time to do this and to have us here. Thank you.
And thank you for thinking through this. It's a problem that I realize exists. And so thanks. All right. I don't know if we'll get through everything today, but I see Brian, are you on to talk about the library lint PR?
Yeah. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, yeah, my PR is pretty simple. It's just a year ago I was experimenting with creating a library chart and noticed that the documentation makes some recommendations about how to name the file. So and then I thought that it would be appropriate to have a lint rule for that. That's the gist of it. I copied some existing test data and created a whole chart such that if someone wanted to create some more, lint rules around library charts, they could do that in a separate test data directory. Just wanted to put it forward for review.
Yeah. Thank you. I just added it to the 3.12 milestone because we only add new features in minor releases. It's pretty large, but that's mostly just because you have the testing, a lot of testing stuff in there, which is exactly the kind of thing we'd want for this. So thank you. I've added it to it and we will review it hopefully sooner rather than later. I'll leave this tab open to come back to it at some point. Yeah, and so this looks good. More linting, more checking of things. I'm very supportive of to give people, good pointers ahead of time.
Cool, thank you.
And thank you for bringing it up here. It's a useful way to come tell us in the meeting what's going on. All right. I think with that, Karina, you want to talk about the session for KubeCon EU?
It's Karen.
Oh, Karen. Sorry, Karen.
Hey,
I
all
grabbed the
good.
wrong name. Sorry about that.
I know it totally could have been
So fast.
Karina. Yeah, I just wanted to check in and see if there is any progress on the Helm maintainer track session. Deadline is the 27th, so that's next week. And I don't know if anyone has started anything, but if not, I started a HackMD, essentially like a template for all the questions that are in that form. So yeah, want to see if anyone has discussed anything or if we want to just, yeah.
So Matt, would you, Andy, myself, whoever else would like to join us for a session to discuss this? I can probably meet tomorrow. I can make it a priority. Otherwise, we go into next week and then,
Yeah.
all bets are off with schedule, but I think
I can't meet tomorrow on it, but I mean, if folks have ideas, writing something is the easy part, as long as there's an idea of what should be written.
Cool.
And I'm not sure who's going to be there to speak. We still were talking about who would be there and who would give the session and how would that go and what would those folks be.
So last week we determined that the only people that we know are going to be there absolutely are Andy and I. Karen, hopefully you're there. Matt or Scott, are you there?
Yeah, my plan is to be there.
Okay. What about anybody else? Because then we can just maybes. I know it's tough. Everybody's getting approval for travel. We could always switch speakers later too. All right.
You can count me in for the meeting. Would it be best to do a doodle poll if, or actually what I'm hearing is that, if we don't meet Friday, we may be kind of behind, right?
I mean, we could meet, next week. I just wanted to make sure that it's already, the deadline's already coming up. So if we don't, anyway. Okay.
We can take this
Let's,
offline.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Take
We
it
can, yeah, we can figure it out. Okay.
Cool. Thanks.
Now you're muted, Matt. Sorry.
All right, I'll try and squeeze one more in here, one more topic. Philip, you had something around Helm set and untrusted chart and Helm template?
Yes, so I'm not sure about the attacker model in Helm. Actually, if this would be maybe a CVE that I discovered, or if it's just if you provide data to an untrusted chart, it's on you. But if I understood that last week correctly, Helm template should be completely safe.
Helm template should be cut off from communicating with the cluster. And so whatever's happening is local templating through Go templates, and then putting that out into your display or the display of the location. And that's what it ends up becoming. And so it ends up essentially working as a template engine. And so if you have an untrusted chart and you're passing your password credentials in there, isn't that like a random site asking you for your Google credentials? And you're saying,
Yeah,
okay, I'll put them in. I don't.
Just an example, right? So
Yeah.
maybe this is like the credentials to your whatever database or something, right? That you later you first want to look at it if it's look at the template output and see if it's doing something reasonable with it, right? What you expect it to do, and then afterwards install it. And this,
And this is going to come down to a bit of your kind of trust on it, right? Because if it passes the password into an application, which it's going to need to, how do you determine what that container is even doing? Right? And the application in the container is doing, you can't even see that from the output from Helm template. You'd actually have to go analyze the container, look at the code in it, go see if you can track down the app. Do you trust the company?
could-
Is it actually what's in there?
Could be that it's like even your own image that you can specify, right?
Yeah, but in this case, this wouldn't be a password vulnerability or a vulnerability because you're opting to pass those credentials to something that you picked. And then it's up to you to trust because Helm does not provide the trust methodology because there isn't a consistent trust methodology across the board for people to determine these things, right? The Department of Defense, who we've come up with earlier, will do things differently than somebody who's just fooling around with something they're testing.
So if you provide values to Helm template of an untrusted chart, it's okay that these credentials might end up in the hands of an attacker. That's not part of the security model.
Well, how would they end up in the hands of an attacker? Helm template doesn't contact a cluster. It doesn't.
Yeah,
run
I don't
anything.
want to tell it on
generates
record
it.
here. I have a way to
Okay.
do it. I have a working proof of concept for this.
Then
How
reach
to-
out to the security mailing list with your proof of concept, and we will dig into how that would happen.
Yeah, I just wanted to check if that might be just totally fine that this can happen and just on you. that you did
I'd
this.
want to look at the details of it with a lot more than you should share in a public call.
Yeah.
And the other folks on the security list who know a lot about security will be able to look at it and analyze it. So yeah, if you could send that over. Okay, we are about out of time. And so we need to talk about moderator notes, triage, those things for the next week. Do we have anybody, any takers?
Sure, I can moderate next week.
All right.
I can do triage. I think me and Joe have been sharing this anyway, but
Yes,
it's my name there.
continue as well.
All right. We've got Scott for moderator. Oh, still in the names. All right. Well, then we are at time, and some of us have hard stops. So thank you everyone for coming. And the last one, French Ben, if you'll be around, we can move this one to our meeting next week and continue that conversation, if that's all right.
Yeah, that's fine. I see you have a pack agenda, so I appreciate it.
All right. And thank you everyone for coming and have a wonderful week. We'll see you online.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.